Hey everyone, I know it's been a while since I've last put out a video on this channel, but I'm happy to announce that I'm going to be hitting the ground running, producing more content for this YouTube channel, and my ambition and aim for that is to inspire and encourage you to produce better music. So in this video, I wanted to share with you a workshop that I held for my Beat Academy members. This is a workshop that was focused on helping you level up your drum programming, getting that realistic feel, getting it to sound and feel professional when it comes to programming drums. Whether you're using loops, programming them, recording them, it's all covered in this workshop. And if you want to attend the next workshop, and as a matter of fact, if you want to become a Beat Academy member, in which you'll have access to all of my courses, the community, the monthly workshops, and get an opportunity to have personalized mentorship by me and other leading industry professionals, well, I would encourage you to visit beatacademy.com and join Beat Academy. It's free, so there's nothing to lose. My goal is to equip you with the resources you need to produce the music you're passionate about making. So go over to beatacademy.com, sign up, and join today so that you can be a part of our upcoming live workshops. So hope you enjoy this video, and I'll see you in upcoming videos. So be sure to subscribe, like this video, and let's go. Let me make sure this is recording. Yeah, it seems to be recording. Okay, guys. So hopefully everybody can see the screen here. Here's what we're going to be getting into today. All right. This masterclass is going to be focused on all things drum programming. So I want to give a little bit intro of what to expect. You know, one of the biggest things I've noticed from a lot of people who are just getting started, and maybe even some who've been producing for a while, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years in, there are the small nuances and details that professionals are doing in their music production, especially with their drum programming, that oftentimes get overlooked. And these are the small nuances that compound into is like, why don't my drums sound the way I hear them sounding in my references or in tracks that I love listening to? So this isn't all just about making beats. This is about how do we bring life into drums. And I know there's an assumption when I mean drum programming. I am not talking about just playing drums with your fingers on a drum machine. That's not what we're talking about. So the grammar here is, let's define the terms. Drum programming is the process in which you are programming, whether you're drawing them in or playing them freehand, recording information that allows your drums to be played back on a DAW, digital audio workstation. So whether you're using Ableton, Logic, Pro Tools, your next door neighbor's calculator, you will be able to follow along with all the principles that I'm going to be sharing today, okay? So we'll just talk about some basic essentials. I don't want to make the assumption that everybody here is already like living on the Himalayan summit and have found enlightenment with their drum programming, okay? I know that we're in all many different walks of life here. Some are just getting started, some are well seasoned, and some of you are drum machines yourselves, right? So you know everything in and out, but I guarantee stick around because there's going to be some really cool nuances. And that's where later on the breaks will be really helpful. So we're going to go over some of the essentials, some of the main fundamentals of things that you definitely need in place to get some really great sounding drum grooves and good feeling drums in your tracks, okay? Then we're going to go into how do you add life into your drums. If you've ever felt like your drums are stiff, by the way, just let me know, guys. If anybody's struggling in the chat, let me know. I'm reading here. Just type in the number 1 in the chat if you're struggling with, like, I don't know why my drums just sound way too stiff or they sound very robotic or lifeless. If you guys struggle with that, maybe they're okay, but you personally aren't fully confident with the drums that you're doing. We got Philip. Cool. All right. So yeah, Jan, Joshua. All right. So we got a couple people in here who really can resonate with that. So let me just speak to that. We're going to be talking about that. Then we'll break into a Q&A. This gives you guys the ability to just kind of like, hey, cool, here's what's on my mind. We'll have that. And then we're going to talk about where does applying loops, extracting grooves, how do I incorporate that in my productions? Then we'll break into another Q&A. And then I want to shed some light on how you guys can work personally with me on your music and achieving your music goals for 2025. So that's going to be there. All right. Does this sound like a good a good itinerary for today, you let me know in the chat, and then we'll get going. If it doesn't, too bad. We're going to do this anyways. So I don't know. But yeah, this is where we're headed, guys. So I'm excited. Let's just hit the ground running. All right. And also during the Q&A time, if you do want to just use whatever microphone you have available to kind of ask your question, that'd be great too. If not, it's not mandatory. If you have a question, I would encourage you to raise your hand using the bottom of the Zoom control panel. There is an option to raise your hand. So when it comes to Q&A time, guys, raise your hand there. And I would like to pretty much keep the questions, the first Q&A break, let's keep them tethered to the topic. And then our second Q&A can be very much open-ended. Anything that's on your mind, whether it's like stuff that you're currently struggling with, things that I could be able to serve you in throughout our time together. All right, guys, let's, I'm going to take a drink of water. Super grateful that you're here. Let's do this. Okay, so let me know in the chat. I'm going to switch over to my screen. Let me know if you're actually able to hear any audio. I think I need to set this up so that you guys are able to hear from my DAW. So can you guys hear? You guys hearing that okay? Okay. Should be also in stereo. One second. Okay, guys, so a couple essentials. Now, I've been hit up a lot of times like, hey, man, like, I would love to program real drums, you know, so we're going to deal with both a acoustic drum kit. I'm also want to talk about and focus on other types of drum, you know, whether it's EDM or hip hop. Regardless of the genre, there is going to be an incorporation of how do we add life. So let's start with just the bare essentials, okay? I'm working in Ableton Live 12 here. Don't focus or fixate on the tools. Focus on the principles that I'm sharing, okay? If you're looking at certain... Now, there are one or two things that are very centered around the Ableton Live framework, but a lot of things can also be applied no matter what DAW you're using, okay? So let me make sure I've got the chat open. I'm going to, so guys, if you've got thoughts, share it with one another. I'm going to be focused on the screen, so I probably won't see the chat while I'm going into this. All right, so let's just start with some of the basics, okay? I'm going to lay down the foundations. We'll move past this pretty quickly, and then let me know if the pace is going too fast. All right, I want to make sure you guys are. My goal is that you leave here with genuine value that can really help you move forward with your production, okay? I don't want to just give you cotton candy. I want to give you stuff with substance. Here we go. So I'm going to start with some of the foundation stuff. We've got drum programming, right? I want to start with just creating a beat. Now, whether you're flying this in by hand, what I mean by that is recording in real time. So if I'm using my MIDI controller, or just literally double-clicking and drawing them in, we want to start focusing in on just quantizing. This is the bare essentials here. So what do I mean by quantizing? That means being able to shift and nudge the notes that we're playing or programming to the nearest grid marking, okay? So let's just say, now this is, most of the time quantizing is happening when you're playing your drums in real time. So I'll go ahead and do that. We've got an acoustic drum kit here. Let's see, let me just tap a tempo, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then round that up to like 96, okay? And then let's go ahead and play that in real time. Okay, a little sloppy, that's cool. I'm just doing this on purpose. And what I'm really going for is we have now the notes on screen here. Now, obviously because I'm playing this by hand, I'm not a robot, and I am going to miss a lot, and especially literally because I'm streaming this live and the audio interface, whatever, there's going to be some discrepancies here. You can see that my notes are way off the grid. But how strong should you be quantizing things? So if I select everything and hold Command-Shift-U, that's going to open up my quantize settings. And let's just say that we're going to have the amount to, let's say, 16, and I'm going to set that to 100. Or let's do this. Every eighth note, okay? And what we're dealing with here is we're saying at every eighth note value, use or nudge the note to the nearest closest eighth note. Now here at Ableton Live, I'm adjusting the start time. You can also say just the end time. So what that means is you can see it extends each note to the nearest eighth note value. So don't want that. I just want to adjust the start time because I want the beginning of each note to line up where I want it. Now I've got every note snapped right onto the grid. Okay, great. It took my crazy, sloppy, messed up drums, snapped them. But a lot of the times when I see or I hear people who are, when I hear music from maybe people who are starting off or programming their drums, they go, okay, I got everything snapped on. What are we going for here? It's always about intention. When I think about what I'm trying to do here with programming live drums specifically, is I need to make sure, what's the intention here? If I need something really stiff and robotic, because there's nothing wrong with having your notes right on the grid. It's just about, does that match or align with the intention? Maybe it's supposed to be robotic because I want it to feel exactly like that. Very stiff, robotic, because it plays into the very mood and the environment I'm setting for the rest of the song. Maybe it is a song about a robot who, turns into a real boy. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, there's nothing wrong with this. But when it comes to my intention is, how can I give this, how do I get the pocket, the groove, the feel that I'm actually going for? Well, then that's where adding and going through some of these essentials that we're going to talk about now really help bring that life back to the drums. So there's two things. There's the pattern, and then there is the looseness. So where does it fall in the grid? So being that this is an acoustic drum set, I am not going to create a pattern that really wouldn't exist with a live player. Meaning, I'm not going to have the hi-hat and this thing play at the same time and then incorporate, like all these other things, or let's say on top of a snare hit, a tom hit or something like that. Now, it might sound good, and again, anything goes, so it doesn't really matter. It's not that you have to, this is exactly gospel when you have to do everything like this. This is just like, okay, I want to, at least my intention is to kind of create the feel and vibe that I normally would get if this was a live drummer. All right. Later on, we're going to talk about how you can actually take a live drummer and have them play for you in your session. So watch this. So right now, what I'm really concerned about is just, I want to make sure that I am not 100% on the grid, because as you and I know, not every real drummer is going to be precisely on the grid. There are some crazy killer drummers out there that are machines. And I actually have worked with a drummer in studio who's like, when I put the click on, he's like, and I have to tell him, dude, you're a little too on the beat, on the grid. Could you just loosen up a little bit? So the way I like to do this is I will go back to my quantine settings, and I want to open up my subdivisions. Instead of eighth note, I normally want to quantize around every 16th note. You can go to 32, but I think 16th note is a great balance. And then dial back my amount. Now, unfortunately, because I've already snapped this to 100, I'm not able to go backwards. So let's go ahead and recreate another drum beat. This time, we're going to set the quantize settings a lot looser than 100. Okay, and there we have it. Still, everything is loose. Now, the way I like to start this off is I actually start from my 0, and this is specifically with Ableton Live 12. If you're using Ableton Live 10 or 9 through 11, a little dialog box will show up, and it gives you a scale and where you want to quantize. So a safe spot for me, as you can see, I don't want it to be off time, because one of the biggest problems with people programming drums is it's just off beat. It's off the grid. It's off time. And if this is off time, then it's a domino effect to everything else in your session. That means that everything else is going to be slightly off. Okay, we'll talk about swing. We'll talk about J Dilla vibe in a bit, but for right now, just covering the foundations. So I'm nudging this, and I want to get somewhere close you can start seeing, can you guys see how this, let me hit fold. Maybe this will be helpful for you guys. You can start to see how they start to magnetically get pulled closer to the grid. So right at 100, that's a little too much. So I like to live around right here, about that 40%. And what that does is it gives me a little bit of that breathing room where it's not exactly on. And now what I want is I want something that's at least anchored. So I don't mind moving the kick closer to that beat, but having my hi-hats a little off. So what you can do is now individually select, let's get our kick drum and let's give that a stronger value. And that's just a kick drum. Okay. And then I can select the hi-hats and give there a looser value. So I'm giving each individual instrument its own recognized value. I can then select the snare drum and do that as well. Okay. So let's duplicate this clip. And now let's quantize to every eighth note at just everything at 100%. And let's see the difference. I'm going to paint this clip yellow, and the loose one we'll put loose, and we'll put stiff. And you guys let me know in the chat which one you prefer. So we'll play the yellow one first. Now, you might just be, oh, green, because I know it's looser in your mind. But you got to listen to it. It's so subtle. These are very, very subtle things that don't often, that oftentimes get overlooked. And I know he's like, okay, bro, this is like pure basic. Hold on, because everything builds off of this foundation. So again, I can go back to the hi-hats here and bring that back. And now I can manually say, you know what? Let's give this a much more noticeable groove. So by all of them being selected, I'm going to hold Command in Ableton Live. And if you're in Logic, or if you're in FL Studio or Pro Tools, just simply use your nudge Command key and scoot this even back. Now, what would go the extra mile is if you randomize, if you go, okay, this one, I'll move ahead. This hi-hat, I'm going to go a little further back. I'll do the same thing with the snare drum. Move that back a little bit. This might be a little ahead. And you're starting to see what I'm getting at here, right? Like, now, if I move notes ahead, it's going to feel rushed. If I move it back, it'll feel more relaxed. So now let's listen with some of these manually tweaked, okay? So here we go. You can hear in that first 2-bar count, that 2-beat count. Listen to the stiff one. Now, the next step is, so we've got one pillar here, timing. That's what we're covering here, is timing. Now, the next step is velocity. Velocity is the most leveraged thing you can do, not just with drums, with strings and everything, but velocity is your most leveraged thing that you can apply that would bring life to your drums. Okay? Say that with me, everyone. Velocity. I bet you some people are actually saying it in their minds. But that's good. All right. So here's what we're getting at. Now, velocity, I'm going to just max all this out. So what I mean by velocity is if you're using an acoustic drum kit, such as what I'm using here, Addictive Drums. So I'm using Addictive Drums. I'm using this Addictive Drums 2, this dead kit. Love it. Sounds great. And a lot of you might be using, Easy Drummer or Contact. It doesn't really matter any of these teeth. They're all equipped with the same functionality. These hi-hats, I'm just going to focus on the hi-hats because they're going to be a dead giveaway of why these things aren't feeling lifelike. Okay, let's bring the velocity to these hi-hats all the way up. I'm just going to hit Command, click this, and scroll all the way up. Okay, so now they're at a 127th value, meaning they're maxed out in their velocity. Now, if you're asking, what on earth is velocity? Velocity is the amplification response to the MIDI performance. Say what? Well, depending on the velocity value you give a MIDI note determines the output of volume of that note. Does that make sense, everybody? The higher the velocity, the louder that note is going to be in amplification or in volume. Just think. But it's not just volume, because people are saying, oh, I'm lowering the volume. When you're dealing with acoustic drums, this is very, very important. The way they make these plugins is that when you play a snare drum in real life softer, it responds differently to the snares. The makeup of the drum itself, how it actually reflects to the room, is completely different. So velocity is how hard the person is actually literally hitting that snare drum in real life. It's not just I'm hitting the snare drum at the same intensity and the volume's different. That's not what we're talking about here. The intensity of how hard I'm hitting that snare drum corresponds with my velocity. So if I'm hitting it very light, I'm going to get a very unique light output. Do we follow with that so far? Because this is the game changer here. You guys follow with me? Okay, so what that means is if I hit play, I'm like, that hi-hat needs to die. So now what we need to do is add life to this. So I'm going to go ahead and create some velocity changes. So I will probably go to the first one, and you can hear it as I go up and down. So I'll start with keeping my very first hit as a stronger velocity value, so that's an accent, and then go to my next one and lowering that one down. Okay, so I'm going to go up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay, maybe a little higher here. Up, down. Let's do that again here. Now, I don't need to do this manually for each one. I mean, if you can, that's going to give you a lot more freedom. But let's just copy this first beat here, and I'm going to duplicate this over and over. And now what I can do is, I'm sorry, let me just move the chat out of the way. Okay, so now I've got strong hat, soft hat. Big difference. Let's go to the stiff one, and let's just put everything at a higher. Let's just like nullify the velocity. Listen to the stiff. Let's unify the velocity of all the hi-hats here. Okay? They're all going to be the same. The snare drum hi-hat. The snare drum, all the same velocity. Kick drum, all the same velocity, okay? This can happen if you're hitting like your accent button on your push or your MPC full level. That's what's going on. Now listen to the stiff. Listen to the loose. What do you know? What is the velocity doing to the drums there? What sense are you getting? I see Benny F here just like bobbing his head, which is a good thing because that's what we should be doing, right? Like, yeah. So put in the chat, let me know. Let's play this one more time. Let's look at the difference here. Stiff. Yeah, it's adding life to the drums. It's making it feel like, okay, there's actual, there's a groove to that. There's a bounce to that. So you can now go ahead and raise that up. And I can also do the same with the key. So the way I think about my velocity, like what's the notes I want to accent? So definitely want to have a higher kick here. And maybe this one, maybe if I add an additional kick here. Okay, so let's do this. Now there's a problem. It's too stiff of a kick drum. So let's lower the velocity of this first. And now we're going to have a nice, a much more groovier approach. You see that? Like, as opposed to, because now what I'm saying is I want to accent this note instead of accenting the downbeat here. So let's apply our lesson 1. It's too much on the grid. So I'm going to nudge this back a little bit. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I'll do the same with some snare drums here. Okay, let's lower the velocity a little bit. Kind of randomize that. Now, cool. Now I want to add, now taking it a step further, we can add some ghost notes. Now, ghost notes in a live acoustic drum would be notes that aren't necessarily as accented as the main hits. So when dealing with acoustic drums, we've got our main snare here. And what I'm going to do is find another hit here and kind of lead it into this main accent here. So we'll just lower the velocity and see what we get. So I get that little flam, that little ghost note that's happening there. So I can do either before it or actually have that happen after the hit here. Right? Now that's a really cool one. Papa. And so I want to make sure that this doesn't get in the way of this one. So I'm going to lower the velocity here. And we can add just another one, just holding your Option key. And I just want to make sure I'm nudging these. Right? So maybe just a little farther back. So what have we covered so far? That yes, your quantizing matters. That's one element. That means the timing, the looseness of what you're programming, whether you're recording it on live or just drawing in the notes. But velocity is the biggest leverage to adding life into your drum programming. Now, this is with real drums. I'm going to move over to some drum samples, maybe like for EDM or hip hop, and apply the same principles there. We'll pause, open up for some Q&A, and then continue going. But does this make sense so far, everybody? I've got the chat open now. I can hear from you guys. I hope this is helpful. Okay. All right. Hold on. I'm gonna go apply these same principles to our program sample drums, and then we're gonna move over to some Q&A time. Okay. So that works fine with some acoustic drums. But what happens if you've got? I'm gonna take the same pattern here. Right. Let's match these sounds now. Now I've got a couple samples here. Maybe like some EDM. I've got another drum rack here loaded with some like more hip hop samples. Okay, so let's just let's play that one. Actually, let's just do this. Let's go at a higher tempo, maybe like 146. And I'm going to do something where I'm actually going to draw in my notes. So I'm going to double click in this. This is going to give me a 1-bar clip. I'm going to hit that. I'm going to trigger it. Okay. And so let's just draw in our notes here. So this is going to be a little different. I'm not going to play it by hand. I'm going to draw everything in. I'm going to raise the velocity and let's just put our timing. The way I like to do this is I want to start with my main let's say subdivision, which means is beats that are divided between the actual main downbeats. And so if we have bar 1, beat 1 here, we have bar 1, beat 2 here. So let's go with our hi-hats. Okay. Now I might want to extend that, so I'm hitting Command 2 and drawing that in. So I actually probably just want a regular quarter note. And, you know, this is completely up to you guys. This could be all personal preference, but so we're going to put our kick and snare on the 2. I'm sorry, let me move the chat because I can't see. All right, here we go. So let's do this. Okay, now we're programming these drums, right? So let's extend. Let me give me. I'm gonna duplicate, so I have 2 bars to work with. Okay, and I'm adjusting the grid so that I have. I can determine where I can place these notes here. But let's do something like this. Let's just have this go here, and we're gonna. Okay, so as you can see, everything is still stiff. But these are all samples, right? Like they're not acoustic drums. Well, you can still apply the same principle. So if we go to our each individual hits here in Ableton Live, such as like this hi-hat. Let's look for that hi-hat that I'm using. Okay, so this one here. I can make sure that the velocity value, and I know it's going to be hard to see here, but I'm this option here where there's volume and then you have a greater than sign to velocity. Well, if it's set to 100, if I set it to 0, no matter what adjustments I make to the velocity of that note, nothing will change. So if you just want this to be not altered by velocity, you would set it at 0. But I do want this to be altered by velocity, but maybe not too much. So let's try keeping it around 54 or 48%. And what that means is now I can go in here, and if I lower the velocity, we have a range. So now I've got, it darkens a little bit. And so we can now kind of repeat that, and we have that vibe again. So the lower velocity note allows me then to create that groove. And so now what we can do is the same thing can be applied with our snare drum. If I could just go here and apply the velocity, right? We can go back into the snare drum, and I could lower, right? And that gives me that ghost note thing that we were doing earlier with the acoustic drums. So I might then want to raise this one up. I can just input the note here. All right. So whatever style, whatever case that you're trying to work on, velocity and timing plays a big role. Now, because those are programmed drums, again, you're still experiencing that stiffness. So I do want to go back into it here. I want to go back into this drums, into the drums that I actually literally drew in place. And I want to go ahead and do some of that nudging that we were talking about. So I can go and nudge these manually, okay? And you can also select the whole row and nudge them manually. And I know they're humanized here. There's a humanize option enabled in 12. You can just click that, and that will humanize this, and you can determine how much of the humanizing takes place. Now, I didn't want to highlight these specific features, and I know some of you are like, well, dude, why don't you showcase the MIDI things and all the stuff that Ableton Live 12 does? I'm focusing more on the principle so that others who are using Logic, Pro Tools, or whatever DAW you're using can understand how to extract those principles into their current workflow. Ableton Live just has included so many new cool features in the MIDI region stuff that make it very accessible and easy to humanize and add that life. So I can select all the drum MIDI notes and just apply the humanizing option, and it's doing that movement for me. So let's do that, and I can determine, hey, do it to the nearest 16th note or the nearest grid, and I can do that there. So you can see how it starts to wiggle, move them around. Now let's see what it sounds like humanized. So some are a little bit more off than others, and that's okay. I can nudge those, but I do think the humanizing thing is a great place to start with. So I'll select the kick drum, and I'll make sure that just the quantizing of that kick drum is in place. So I want to, I don't want to humanize that. I want the kick drum to be spot on. And what's important, and we'll wrap this part up and move over to some Q&A stuff. What's important about this is that, there you go. So what's important about this aspect is that if I have my kick drum just locked in, that gives more contrast to the other elements in that drum groove that aren't so locked in. So you get more of that push and pull effect. All right. So let me pause here. We covered, we went through this pretty quickly. And again, I know some of you are like, dude, I'm well past this. Don't worry. We can get to some more stuff. So Laura, yeah, what's on your mind? If you have a question, just use the raise hand function down below, and would love to get to some of your thoughts.
Can you explain what flams are?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What did you say? Can you repeat that again, Laura?
Can you explain what a flam is?
What a flam is. Okay, yeah, great question.
Because I've never ever seen anybody do that with the ghost notes. I've never heard of that before.
Welcome to the workshop. I'm so glad you're here. That's right. Yeah, so what you would normally experience is in an acoustic drum kit, a flam would be when the drummer hits the snare or hits any drum for that matter, and the stick bounces on it. I'm going to try to give it the most basic and simplified definition. When the stick is bouncing, or that's usually the flam, right? So you have the hit, but you have the stick bouncing off the actual drum. You're creating a flam there. And any other drummers in here, if you want to rock some paradiddles or things like that, you can comment in the chat. Does that make sense, Laura? Yeah, and those ghost notes, those small little nuances, that's what goes a long way. So like if we went back to the acoustic drum kit here, okay, if we just did, so you hear now at a faster tempo how that flam really does play a big role. It's so adding that extra note here, but the way to do the flam is that your snare drum note needs to continuously touch another, this E1 has to touch the other snare drum note as well for it to give you that effect. Now, listen to the difference without it, right? So we'll take this out. Here it is. Yeah, right? Big difference. That's that Radiohead in Rainbows, Weird Fishes type of vibe. So, yeah. Great question. Yes, Navneeth? Naneeth?
Yep. So I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So how can I make my drum patterns like realistic, the complex ones? You know, like the ones heard in rock music drum covers. Like I understood like what you taught now, velocity and all. But the crazy fills, ghost notes. So is there any specific technique for that?
Yeah. So a lot of this is going to involve work, as you can see, right? Intuitively, we can program, take the time. So some basic things I would encourage you to do. So if you're Naneef, if you're talking about, hey, I want to do like these Phil Collins crazy drum fill stuff, kind of things with my acoustic drums, you have to consider the main principles we just covered and applying them to drum fills. So for instance, if we're getting into drum fills, you always have to be reminded of the importance of, hey, I can't just do these big fills and make sure that all the notes are not, I'm not doing the timing, the velocity. So one way I always do this, if I'm trying to work out a fill, and let's say my song is at 115 BPMs, right? So let's take this, for example. I'm going to take this here. I'm going to duplicate the drum groove that we created. I'm going to do a fill at the end of the bar 4. If I'm at 115, dude, I need to go all the way down to like 62 BPMs. And then right here, like, okay, this is where I want my fill to take place. So what I'm literally going to do is like find these notes here. I want to draw them in, like boom, boom, and like just kind of draw these notes. And what I like to do is sometimes just loop it like this, so I can just focus in on. Sorry guys, I gotta move the screen a little bit. Just focus in on that loop for a second. Now, this is what I meant earlier, that you got to make it realistic. I'm not going to throw those toms on top of the main groove because the drummer is not an octopus. So keep the kick on the downbeat, maybe the hi-hats leave, and then we start going into, right? And just fill the snare in on the fill there. Here we go. So that is just, that is wrong. I want it to be there. I want to accent this a little more. Accent the kick. Okay, so then what I'm doing is, as I'm filling these out, and I get this, I need to make sure that first tom is hit, it's accented. The second one could be lower in velocity, and maybe the third one. Okay, so you gotta get the idea. Then go back to that tempo you're working at, because that's going to make building fills a lot easier. Okay, I'm going to show you another crazy cheat code here, guys. And this is only like if you're using, and a couple other VSTs do this, but with Addicted Drums 2, dude, here's a crazy cheat code. if you're like, man, I hate drawing in these freaking fills, it takes way too much time and energy from me, I just don't want to focus in on that, I head over here to where it says beats, and I literally will type in fills, and all these are fills that you can audition, and if you hit play, and what's great about this is like, oh, that's a really dope fill. So just click and drag that, and there you go. And that's the actual MIDI data of that fill. And then you can go to each note and say, well, I want this to be a little louder. I want the timing to be off. And so that's super cool. And you have a whole bunch of MIDI fills and stuff like that that you can actually mess with. So I hope that makes sense for you, Naveed. Look, and the reality is that's what separates those who are just using a basic 4-bar loop all the way, and those that are like, man, that's freaking pretty gangster with the drum programming, is that it does take the work to go in and add all the nuances. So if you want realistic drums coming out of your VST acoustic drum kits, you got to put in the work, right? In a little bit, I'm going to show a couple tools that can be very helpful to speed that up, but primarily, you know, you can't shy away and can't get lazy on wanting to add those extra things in there, because that's the stuff that raises it from just being amateur 4-bar loop to, wow, that's pretty intricate. I can hear some of those nuances and differences, right? So yeah, Joshua.
How's it going?
Good, brother.
I was just wondering, how and when would you incorporate triplets on your groove, and what sounds would you use it for?
Yeah, well, triplets are really good, especially like if you're doing some swing stuff, right? So even in a 4/4 time signature where there's 4 beats per measure and every quarter note receives a beat, doing triplets can give a great emphasis on a fill. So if I've got something that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, da 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 da, boom, right? That's where you would implement like triplets to emphasize that. It's a great way to also to, let's say, like, I don't know why, but I'm thinking of like earlier Outkast stuff, right? So let me see if I can just show. Let me show and not just say. I think that would be helpful. So let's go back to our program drums over here. Okay. So now that we've got these drums, let's say that I'm now going to right-click on this grid, and I'm going to open up my triplet grid. Okay, now you see that the grid moves, and now I can add some notes within the triplet grid. Okay, so let's say with this drum here, I'm going to add, now that this is in triplet grid, let's just do, let's say 1, 2, 3, and you'll hear the emphasis that triplets give. Right? So triplet. Now look what happens when we take off the triplet grid. Look where that note sits. Do you see that, Josh? Not sure if you can talk or not, but can you talk, Josh? Are you there? Oh, hold on. I think I have to go to the settings here. Yeah, you should be.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so now the strength is, like, if I didn't have triplet grid on, I would have to kind of somehow guess where to put this. But because I can enable triplet grid, I kind of know, okay, I can snap that there. Really cool thing too, especially with a lot of trap stuff, you can go to the hi-hats and put in some triplets and then snap it off triplet grid and go to like a regular grid timing, and then this is what you'll get. So you get that, right? It's that trill, that feel. So that's how you can kind of step out of the basic boundaries of just a basic 4 on the floor grid. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it helps. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Ben, what's up, man? Good to have you. Oh, I'm sorry. For some reason, here, I think there's a setting I have to.
Oh, there we go. Sorry,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
might have been on me, dude.
Okay.
Hey, Ivan.
What's up, Ben?
So Not a lot, man. So grateful for you doing this, and I just I think you're awesome. I'm just a big fan of you, so I just want to give you cred before jumping in. So I'm a first-time caller, or you know,
First
but a
time caller,
listener
long
for a
time
while.
listener. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly. So my question is more around the process because I've done most of your choruses, I think. Um, And I'm just trying to understand where, when we're doing like the creative right now, and then we get into mixing and all that stuff. Um, what what's what have you found using Ableton, like the best kind of workflow from like using a drum rack, and then you combine, how
yeah.
we like to add the low and kind of for the thump, and then you like a little high for kicks, and really like manipulate the drum sounds to get them sounding like the way we want. What's the process that you use right now to be like the most efficient in getting to coming from the beginning to the end? And maybe you're going to be answering this question or kind of talking about it later, but I'm just wondering because I know you're in the drum rack now, but eventually you probably want to process effects. Are you doing that all in the drum rack now, or what's that look like to you now?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering. It's been like years. We've been doing this for a while now, so.
Yeah, Ben, dude, I'm so glad you're here, man, and grateful for that feedback. So thank you so much, and grateful that all the resources have been a benefit to you and so many others. Yeah, I think at the very heart of your question is not necessarily like technically how do you go about layering the stuff, but if I'm hearing you correctly, is what workflow do you incorporate that allows you to have the most freedom with creative input when it comes to sonically balancing your drums? Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is there anything that's, like, exactly. Like, what are the tools, or how are you doing that?
Yeah,
How are
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
thinking about that from the
Yeah,
beginning to the end?
sure, man. Okay, so for everybody who's kind of like mystified by Ben's question, who's here or maybe watching the replay, I think what we're getting at is like, there's so many possibilities to arrive at the finish line, especially when it comes to producing music and using all these tools. Oh, I layer my drums this way, or I use the drum rack this way. I don't use the drum rack. I use VST battery, or I use the arrangement window. And how you get to the finish line, man, I don't care, because at the end of the day, those who are going to be moved by your music are just listening to it, and they're not thinking, wait a second, bro. The guy used the drum rack to layer this. No one's going that deep. So what that should immediately do is give you the remove the burden that we can often put on ourselves in searching for the resolution that would be the savior for why we're really stumped. And so the deeper question is, I'm not trying to get too meta here, but what I'm getting at, and I think this is just going to be unpacking a lot more for everyone. The real answer isn't, hey, Ivan, what do you do so that it's easier down the road to layer your drums and mix them and stuff like that? But it's almost like I want to equip you, Benjamin, and many watching is like, man, what is going to resonate with you best? What is going to allow you to be free to really capture a creative workflow that allows you to enjoy the process? And so if I gave you, this is how I do it, that can then place another burden on you to think, well, yeah, that I like how he does it, but it still is misjointed with the way I like to think through making music. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that in mind, that's the caveat. I'm going to share with you, there's many different ways to arrive there, so don't feel pressured at all. But for me personally, because I know there is like, wow, I love to see how this guy does it. So I totally get that. There's a balance here.
Yeah.
All right. So how I like to initially work, my main intention and my main emphasis, and whether I've got an artist in here or just coming up with something for film or TV, it's not so much like I need to remove any entanglements that get in the way of capturing my main idea. So I rarely drag and drop my kick drum samples and my stuff in arrangement window and arrange my drum beat that way. There are plenty of people who live and breathe by that. Great. I don't. And what I mean by that is they'll find kicks and stuff, and they'll put the kick on track 1, the snare drum on track 2, and then they just group them all. That's fine. That's fine. For me, it's just so much easier that I have control of just all the drums. I load them up here, and I could just trigger them because I can swap out the sound if I'm not really happy with it. I can pitch up and pitch down. It's just so much efficient for me working here. And then let's say if I have this groove that we've created, and I can expand my drum rack here, and this just allows me to see all the sounds that. And so if I really wanted to affect this kick drum, I will just literally just drag and drop whatever effect I want it. So if it's an EQ or whatever the case may be, there it is, right? Now, what about layering the kicks? How do I do that? Well, sometimes what I used to do was just drag another kick drum. So let's say if I went to like another folder and I just grabbed the sound and dragged it here, and then went into the MIDI and say, copy the same kick drum pattern to this same thing, it started to just bulk up, and I had a bunch of freaking notes that were all over the place, and I'm like, I don't like doing that anymore. So essentially, what I started doing was just going to that one sound that I want to layer. I'm sorry, like Zoom has all these buttons all over the place, and I keep clicking them. All right, so what I would typically do is, if I want to layer that sound, I would just highlight the kick drum and hit Command-G, and that enables a group. It groups the sound itself. And then I actually drag and drop the sound within the sound. Whoa. Because now I have 2 kicks being triggered in the same channel. Okay? And so I can blend and mix. So I can be maybe just this sound. And that's going to be all the layers that make up my kick, right? And that means I just have one note represented here for all the kicks that are layered. Then that's it. And so like I'm treating it here, and then what I'll do is like if I have a loop incorporated, which we're gonna get to in a little bit, if I have a loop, I would just group these 2 together as they're all my elements that are in my drums. But creative flow, I like working like this. Now, if down the road I'm like, man, I want a little bit more control, I then right click and I say extract chains. Here's a cool cheat code, because now I have the MIDI performance and that kick just by itself separate. So that I can literally say kick drum. Right? And I can drag and drop that over to my arrangement, and voila. Now I just have my kick. Does that make sense?
It's beautiful, man. That's yeah. That's why I asked you, man. You're the master. You've been doing this for a long time. So
yeah.
That just saved me a lot of time. So
yeah, dude. So I personally like my drum rack because I love the idea of just doing this and just having all my freaking notes there. Because here's the problem. If you notice when we did the acoustic drums, what did you guys notice about this? Look at the acoustic drum MIDI clip. Here it is. It's piano roll, right? And so when I use EXO and I use battery, it's all piano roll. The reason why I love my drum rack, and since it's native to Ableton Live, I have every sample labeled there, and I'm like, bro, I got it. And all my hits are labeled with that sample name, and it just makes it easy for me to just create a beat, get it going, and then hit the ground running. I don't worry about the mixed stuff because like I just find the right sample to begin with. All right, so I hope that was helpful for everyone else in here too. Yeah, Dave, I know some of these things can probably go over your head a little bit. I want to move over to my next segment and then open it up for some more Q&A stuff, and then just share with you guys how we can personally work together for the upcoming year. All right, so that was good. That was a good question, and I know that probably like pulled the thread, and now everybody's like, well, now I have 85 more questions. So, dude, this is nuts. Gloria, let me get to you really quick, and then I'll move on. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay. I've been programming drums for a long time, but I've more recently been doing some trap and hip hop. Other than the triplet, is there anything else that is signature for trap hip hop?
Sure. There's a lot of things to be signature, but what do you feel is the most signature thing that you've noticed with a lot of trap and hip hop that you listen to?
hard-hitting groove.
Okay, hard-hitting groove. But what does that mean, Gloria?
What does that mean?
It's so important to
You can
define these
hear-
things. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why I'm trying to get more clarification, because it is definitely a separate genre from what I normally use. Maybe okay, someone said use of 808s, but other genres also use 808s. So maybe that's why I'm asking you the question.
Yeah.
More definition.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's a good question to ask, because what you're trying to do is I want to identify the hallmarks of what makes this a trap drum loop as opposed to any other hip hop loop, right?
Especially for film and TV, which is the area that I work in.
Okay. Well, the first thing that's really going to help you is becoming a great student of a lot of that. So create a whole bunch of playlists of trap, music, or Travis Scott or whatever. And what you need to do, dedicate about an hour or 2 hours of your time this week and just be a student. I was like, what's the common denominator between all these beats? This is a great thing for you to discover and get familiar with, because then when you become a good student of that, you can start to draw away from that. Okay, this is what the common denominator is for that. And because I can tell you exactly what would trap beats, but I want to equip you with the principle that you can do this with any genre, whether it's reggaeton, mumbatone. You can now identify, let me study this thing. What is the common characteristics of these grooves that I'm noticing a lot? And one of those major key things, especially in trap, are the rolling hi-hats. They have a signature sound. So I'm going to, this will be a good segue to my next section, which is like incorporating loops. Okay. So just hold on here, Gloria, and I'm going to use this question to answer it, but also segment into my next section. Okay. Great. Thank you for asking. And I'm glad you're here. You're in the right place. Okay. So, let me go ahead and, okay, you guys should be seeing my screen, right? Okay, let's do this. So building off of what Gloria is asking about is those rolling hi-hats. Now, let's go about how to do that by actually inserting them. So here's the hi-hat here. Let's go to like a trap tempo, which would be like maybe around 140, 143. And here is, okay, so there's a hi-hat. So if I just use my pencil tool to draw a repetitive note here, oops, take that off. Okay. And let's just solo this one here. Okay. Okay. Let's just give ourselves a basic pattern. Now, one of the most important things about trap hip hop drums, as you start to notice, Gloria, is a contrast between those rolling hi-hats that typically happen and the triplets that we covered earlier, but not necessarily just the timing, but the pitch. And that's an important element as well. So what I can do is, if I've got this hi-hat and we add some subdivisions, so let's just say here, I'm going to add a couple and just become a ninja with command 1 and 2. 1 is to shorten your grid. So 1 makes it smaller and 2 expands it. And I can just have my finger and thumb right here, and I can just do a whole bunch of things here. Now, I know they're tools, guys. I know everybody, but it's so simple. In Ableton 12, you can do the C. I get that. I want these principles to be applied all across the board, whether it's FL, Logic, Pro Tools. That's why I'm not highlighting specific Ableton Live features. Okay, guys? So I'm just going to expand this. So that what I like to call my Hialeah water sprinkler, that the little lawn sprinkler effect, that's what you're going here. That's what you're trying to get. But not just the timing, but what we can also do, I would duplicate this. So on the second time it happens, we can adjust the actual timing, right? We can implement some of the Now, you don't want to just randomly start just clicking anywhere and do all these things. It really needs to make sense. Use the rolls of these hi-hats to set up your hit. So what would make more sense is if my snare drum is on the 2 and 4, and we have, let's say, with the kick here, and see, I'm missing there you go. See, I'm losing sight of it. So what would be best is, let's set up the snare hit with the rolling hi-hat. So let's do this. So remember, the rolls, where you're rolling them accents that moment. Now, here's another thing here. So let's say now that hi-hat, where is it? Here's the hi-hat, okay? I'm now going to go to that hi-hat, and I'm going to extract change similar to what I showed Benjamin here. Check this out, guys. This is pretty cool. So now we've got our hi-hat separate. Let's solo this. And now what I want to do is just right-click here where it says pitch, right? And you can transpose the pitch. Actually, a real easy way is I'll do this. I'll usually have, well, so I've got the hi-hats drawn in there. Sorry, why is this starting every 4? It should start 1 bar. Here we go. Okay. And then just simply, I'm sorry, the Zoom interface is all over the place. Okay. Right-click where it says Show Automation in the clip. And now we can do cool things like actually draw in the pitch. So we can go up like this. And then pitch it down on the opposite end like this. So now we get these cool. There you go. Okay. So once again, if I went too fast, just watch the replay. But essentially, you don't need to extract the change to do that. You can keep everything in the drum rack. Okay. You just need to go to that parameter here on the transpose knob, right click, and show modulation source, clip envelope right there. That's where I'm doing it. So all I'm doing is this, right? I'm just changing the pitch of, there you go. And why? Oh, because I'm doing it to the wrong one. There you go. All right. Yeah, that helps. So here you go. Okay, does that make sense? Now, cool. That's a lot of freaking work if I can get him doing that. That's where incorporating loops can really change the game for a lot of people. And I'm all about if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if I have drum loops, especially with a lot of hi-hats and stuff like this, that have a lot of that stuff happening, I'll drag and drop that into the session. And now let's go ahead and just mute that. And I'm going to now play my kick and snare with this additional loop in here. So here we go. Let's mute everything else. Totally forgot we have. And put this here. And so now what I want to do is let's just take a couple of these. See what I'm saying, Gloria? This just made your life a lot easier because now I can just go through these top hi-hat loops, cycle through them with my foreground beat, which is going to be, let's just do this. There we go. Okay. So I'm essentially just going to, gosh, this is such a mess. I got to move everything because I can't click Ableton. Zoom is like, but what about me? All right, here we go. So now we've got our, and so at this point, now I would probably want to move this over to my arrangement window. We do it like this and move the loops over here. And now I'm going to be focusing primarily on creating the small nuances like how we did before with the acoustic drum beat where we're nudging the velocity a little bit. Now I can find places or interchange certain things that I like about other loops and kind of just bring them in here and, right? And create, that's my groove one, duplicate that. And you kind of get where I'm getting at here. That we're now being very proactive with choosing how to incorporate this. And this is just a great move because you can then just say, click this, lower the pitch here. So it's going to require a little bit, a lot less work of having to program all that, but that's how you incorporate both of those together. All right. I haven't viewed the chat yet. I know you guys are probably all going crazy here, but yes. Does that make sense? Dave, I see your hand raised, buddy. Just hold tight. We're going to have another Q&A in a little bit. So That leads to incorporating loops into the, okay, there we go. Alongside my drums. And that is that's probably 90% of the time how I like to work. What I like to do is I create my foreground beat, maybe my kick, my snare, and then I have either a loop where that kick and snare is just re-emphasizing or emphasizing more depth to that loop. But loops is a part of my workflow DNA. Why? Well, because, dude, why not? Right? I could either program all the stuff, and this also includes my acoustic drums too. I can program all the stuff, or I can then start to incorporate the loops. Then I want to show you a really amazing cheat code. And yes, it is proprietary to Ableton Live, but it is such an amazing game changer. So, so here are some loops, right? We have, let's say, so what I meant earlier is that I would incorporate this loop here, and the loop could sound just fine. And I would use this as a way to detect, okay, here's that kick that I drew in with my beat. Let's take the metronome off. There's that next hit. I'll pause, and I'll just drag and drop that kick because I'm trying to copy the same timing and rhythm there. So let's take this acoustic drum kit that we programmed earlier. Where is it? Oh gosh, I'm in the wrong place. Here's the acoustic drum kit that we programmed earlier. That's right. We added the fill and we were looping it on. Let's add this and go back to here. Okay. So now let's check this out. Okay. So, man, I really would love, let's move this session over and let me bring the addictive drums through. I, first of all, would love to have this beat, but have more control over the sounds, right? So I'm just literally going to drag that into my MIDI track and hit the drum feature. Now this will then extract the actual programming, the performance, and what's even cooler is that it also extracts the velocity. So if I can just now solo, so that's my acoustic drum kit, but obviously some of the notes need to be fixed. So we have the rim knock isn't what's supposed to play there, it's the hi-hat. So let me just click this. There it is. And I'm going to raise the velocity for the whole thing. And then move. There you go. So this is why the very beginning of this workshop makes so much more sense, because now I need to go in and adjust these velocities, right? Move these hits here. That kick should probably come in right around here, right there. So I'm taking now the rhythm and the groove from this drum loop. Now, what if you programmed drums, like you drew it all by hand, but you really loved the feel and the looseness that you would experience from an actual drum loop? As you can see, this drum loop, the kick is way off, right? The kick is off. And this proves what I was talking about earlier, the importance of how quantizing and not having your drums exactly on the downbeat plays a big role in creating that life that you want to experience with your drums. So with Ableton, we can extract the groove. We can actually take the actual feel that we're experiencing with any audio, not just with the drums. This could be a vocal performance. This could be the way somebody played the tabla. And we're essentially just sucking the groove out of that and then applying it to our drum. So let's try doing this. Let's go to our drum beat here that we have. And I know I'm going 1,000 miles per second, guys. So just thank you for your patience and bearing with me. But we're going to quantize this to every eighth note at 100%. Okay? And we're going to raise the velocity of the hi-hats full. Okay, everybody is stiff. Everybody's quantized to the nearest eighth note. Now what I'm going to do is I want to extract the groove that we took out from that drum loop. I want to now implant that into this, into my MIDI drums. So I'm going to go over here to the groove. I'm going to hit the drum loop, and then let's apply that. Now you see it snapped everything back out to time. And so in this groove pool, you can determine how much of the timing do you want to mirror, how much do you want it to be quantized, and how much of the velocity do you want to match. So we'll do that again. I'll choose this, and there you go. And hit the button, and it's going to apply it. So this goes back to some question someone asked earlier about, like, how would I do all those drum fills? How can I do this? You can literally take a Phil Collins drum fill audio and drag it to your MIDI drums and say, extract the drum pattern, and there you go. And that's how you can incorporate that. Now, really quickly, I want to move over to my last segment here, and that's how do I creatively incorporate loops? How can we create patterns now with loops that are now much more, not just the essentials of creating a pocket, but how can we come up with really cool creative drums? And these are things that I learned picking up from my years of working with Timberland and at the earlier part of my career, and just how do I create my own unique pocket? Okay, so can we get into that for a little bit, or do you guys want to, wrap up here? Leo says no. Okay. All right. So let's do that then. Let me just head right back in. So now let's take something that I'm going to, so let's do this here. I'm going to start fresh. Okay. And for this, I'm going to do something I haven't done, and I think this can be universally transferred over. So I'll use something like XO. This could be battery. This can be your drum rack. But let's just say you are not you're not using Ableton Live. Okay. Now XO, as you can see, it looks like this isn't sponsored by Crayola or anything. This is just a plugin that allows me to map out all of my drum samples in my actual library. I can actually say, these are the sample folders I want you to scan. And after it scans that, yes, close. After it scans it, it will map it out via color. So all my kicks would be here. And if I come across something, now this is very cool. I'll do this sporadically sometimes because I will come across a sound that I normally won't come across by using my normal go-to hotspots or my browser folders in Ableton Live. This gives me a little bit of freedom to be like, well, I'm feeling lucky today. Let's see what I come across. And so I'll just kind of scan the, okay, that's fine. Assign that. And they give you similar sounds. Yep, that's good. Ableton Live 12, though, does incorporate a sound-like feature now that you can do in your drum rack, which is pretty nuts, and I'll probably talk about that in a little bit. But let's just... Okay. Now, I've got a big... Now, this is sound selection science, okay? So, let's get... Okay. Let's expand this, open that, so I have... So, it's a pretty big, beefy kick drum. I don't want to have a beefy snare drum. I want to have something small in contrast. That's going to give lots of contrast between the kick and that snare. Yeah, sure. We'll use that. So now I have, right? Okay. So let's now do this. Before I've started with writing the beat down, let's get inspired and find a couple samples that might work. So I'll just browse through whatever loops, or you can go on Splice or whatever, wherever you find it. But sure, that sounds pretty cool. Let's put that in here. And this is now, let's play this. Okay, so I want to layer this with my foreground beat. But now what I want to do is take this loop, head over here, and slow it down so it's actually playing twice as slow. And what we get is, but we're getting all those artifacts because it's trying to maintain the pitch and the integrity. So instead, I'm going to go from beats to repitch, and that is just going to repitch the sample. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then I can now draw in these. So what I'm going to do is put my kick and then that little rim and then hit fold so I can just focus on those two notes. And now we have, and then put this where I want. And I'm going to duplicate this, okay? So now we have the ability to move this. So so now I want to be able to have the loop respond or interact or be a symbiotic relationship with my kick or my snare. So I could do two things. We can use the gate and the compressor. I tend to start with the gate, see what that sounds like, but we're going to use a feature called sidechain. And I know I'm going really fast here, guys, so take notes and then watch the replay, okay? So using the sidechain is going to allow me to have a signal allow the gate to close and open. So in this case, we're going to have the XO, and I want just when the kick hits. And now we can open this up a little. There you go. That's a cool groove. And then we can add auxiliary. So we've got our main foreground beat, our kick and snare. We've got a loop adding the texture or a little bit of texture. And then what I like to do is duplicate the same track here. But this case, I have something unique. I've got like some random chatter, random Indian market thing. So I'm now going to incorporate that as like more texture and noise. And I'm literally going to pick a random spot. And I'm actually going to quantize the audio. So you can do that in Ableton. You can just select all and you can hit quantize. It says right here. The same way we've been quantizing before. You just, every eighth note. So we'll apply that. And why am I doing that? Because it's going to create warp markers and snap that to the nearest eighth. And what we get is this. Now, I might not want this to follow the same open or close rate. I might want to lower the threshold a little bit more with this. And then we can incorporate more elements in different parts of the arrangement, which would be something like, so whatever that sound is, let's change that out. Yeah, that's fine. And I'll duplicate this, and then we have, so this is going to be, and we're just applying all the lessons we've gone over today, okay? So, there you go. Now I'm going to lower the grid, and then add additional ones here. I don't like what that's doing, that because it's taking too much attention there. So I'd rather just then have it. And that's my new groove that now I can incorporate and, let's say, adjust the timing a little bit and now start adding things on top of that, right? So incorporating another. Now let's say like, all right, Gloria's in the mix and she's like, bro, I gotta have those hi-hats. I'm like, I got you, Gloria. I got you. You need the rolling hi-hats, no problem. This is why I'm like, just incorporate it as a loop, because then you're saving yourself so much time. If I wanted it in this kind of context. So I'm gonna stop there for a moment. Open the floodgates here for some questions. Use your raised hand. How How was that, guys? So just reiterating everything we covered in this masterclass, we talked about that the core essentials, the foundations you have to stand on are making sure that when you're quantizing, instead of having stiff drums, whether you're programming them or playing them in, quantizing goes a long way. Feel free to click on your notes and nudge them slightly off the grid so you have more of that looseness to it. Velocity will give you the most leverage in making the drums feel more humanized, where when you're adjusting your velocities, you can give more to notes you want to accent, less to those that you don't, so that you have more of that life back into your drums. Then we talked about the importance of incorporating loops and extracting the grooves, and how loops can bridge the gap between drums that are really stiff. Because if I were to play you this really quickly, just going back to this because I feel like nerding out, if we took the loop out of this context and all we had was... That's what I hear from a lot of amateur production. It's this kind of stuff. Just... And nothing technically wrong with that, right? This is all stiff. This is all right. But look at the difference when you start to incorporate the bridging of the gaps with this loop. I actually would probably even just leave the hat out because this is a good enough anchor. And then I would start building around that. So those are those small nuances that go a long way. All right. So Dave, what's up? What's on your mind?
Hey, can you see me?
I hear you.
Okay. How you doing? Like
hey, Dave, good to see you.
You too. This is like a week link for me.
This is what?
It's a weak link.
Okay.
The recording chain. And like I had a guitar and he said everything sounds great except the drums are a little stiff. And I'm like, oh shit. and you can say that about the last track, which is more electronic.
Dave, I'm sorry to cut you off, buddy, but you are going in and out volume, so it's kind of hard to hear it out.
Let me get closer. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had the guitarist come over and told me that the drums were sounding very stiff.
Okay.
Right? And so it's like a weekend for me. And the prior track was very electronic. This one's more live. And so
yeah, buddy, you're still going in and out. So I don't know, maybe it's speaking too loud or
let me just say the original sound. Let me just say, is this better?
Yeah, I don't know. Just keep talking because it just goes in and out.
Okay, I turned off original sound, so maybe that.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So my guitarist was like, everything sounds great, but the drums sound very stiff. And it wasn't a very electronic track. It was more of, I want live sounding drums.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a red flag for me that I've got to fix this. I bought a Korg NanoPad. It's helping a little, but that's not the problem. The problem I'm realizing is, let's say somebody presented you with a bunch of tracks, not mixed yet. So you still have the opportunity to play with the MIDI drums, but the songs are all done, right? So instead of going back and redoing everything, what would you do that would help humanize those drum tracks?
Are you on Ableton or what are you using?
I'm using Pro Tools.
Okay. So listen, there is actually a plugin by Mixed in Key. There's a plugin called Human. I think it's the Human. If the question you're asking is, how do I humanize all the stuff I've already kind of done? And this is MIDI that you've programmed, right? Because Human plugin can actually work with audio. So even if you recorded or you're using a drum loop that sounds pretty stiff, it'll run it through and humanize it and actually add some of that looseness that we covered in today's class.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm using Easy Drummer.
Yeah, Easy Drummer. Yeah.
It doesn't have the ease that with the drum plugin that you're using, which is what? What's the plugin you're using mostly?
Addictive Drums 2. I love that one because it has all of those MIDI stuff in there that I'm like, bro, that's a game changer. I just click, drag, and drop that in there, catch the feel, and capturing stuff there. Yeah. So what's the question you're asking, Dave? I'm just trying to like pinpoint that exactly. How do I humanize what I've already gotten in my session?
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of that from scratch.
Okay. Well, if you're using Easy Drummer and you've already got the MIDI drums programmed, you're gonna have to apply a lot of the principles we shared earlier. It's work. Right? So I would just take the chunks out about like 8-bar or 4-bar instances. Start with your four bars and be like, okay, can I adjust some of the velocities here? Can I do all the stuff there? These are some of the advantages that working in certain DAWs that focus on MIDI production excel at. Same thing with, Studio One or whatever it is. But yeah, unfortunately in Pro Tools, you're going to have to just go in there, adjust some of the velocity, adjust some of the timing, do it in 8 or 4-bar fragments, and then just move on. It's going to take some of that work, or else you're just going to be like, no, it just sounds stiff, and just deal with it. Another easier thing is just to get a couple of audio loops that incorporate a lot of the variations, a lot of the fills, just open up a Splice account, and then look at, acoustic live drums and use that. You're limited, though, to the audio loop itself. That's why I like the balance between both worlds would be something like an Addictive Drums 2, where you can capture the MIDI, or Easy Drummer is great. I mean, it sounds great, and you could just use that. But the reality is you're going to have to dedicate some time to go in there and adjust that, because that's how same thing when people are like, oh, these strings, they sound fake. Well, you have to put in a little bit of work, some velocity, some MIDI adjustments, some of that, to replicate the real things that players often do when they play, such as the ghost notes, such as the flams, such as like, all those other stuff too. So check out Human from Mixed and Key. I think it's good friends with the guys there at Mixed and Key. But this basically allows you to literally just slap that on your drum bus, literally, like even if it's audio, and it'll actually add the organic feels to loop samples and your MIDI if you wanted it to. So that could probably be the most easiest solution, is that you literally put that plugin on your drum track and just turn the knob. That's it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Not to say that Easy Drummer doesn't have fills. It does. You can do that, similar to what you're using. And there is a feature in Pro Tools that lets you drag a MIDI file into an audio track. I don't know if the reverse is true. I'll have to try that. But I think that might be an Ableton-only feature.
Yeah, because it's pretty gangster.
Yeah.
Sorry, a little biased. I'm a little biased, but what can I say?
I'm not totally. I've used Ableton in the past, but you know what? I think there's a plugin that you can make Ableton work within.
Yeah, it's called Rewire. I don't know if it's still Justin. Yeah. Rewire. So thanks for that, Dave. That was a good highlight. Let me yeah, thank you. Yeah, guys, anything else could be related to this? We've got some time here before we log off. I do want to spotlight. I have some spots that I am opening. I am really looking forward towards working with those who are just serious and excited about wanting to experience accelerated growth. So I've got spots open for the mentorship program. Just visit beatacademy.com/apply. This is by application only. We then jump on a call to see if this is going to be the best fit for you. But eventually, I'm really, really just excited about the level of transformation that I have been experiencing with those that are in the mentorship program. I've got John here who used to be on it. But yeah, I'm so floored about this. And it's not for everyone. That's cool. That's why these masterclasses are here. I am wanting to serve you guys as much as I can. But if you're wanting to just link up with me and get some personal mentoring, coaching, really just excel, let's do this. I think 2025 is the right time for a lot of you guys to just take it to a whole new level. So beatacademy.com/apply. Beatacademy.com. I'm going to put in the Zoom chat for all the Zoom chatters here. beatacademy.com/apply. All right. Okay. Mud, what's going on, bro? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, Mud. Hold on. I didn't see Nick. Nick, let me get you first, and then I'll get to Mud secondly.
Cool. Hey, how you doing?
Doing good.
Just a real quick question because I'm a Pro Tools user. I use Studio One too, but have
It's okay,
you
man.
looked at, because I have not, but I have not looked into it in depth. I just wondered if you had looked into the Pro Tools sketch thing at all yet.
No, I'm going to be honest with you. I used to use Pro Tools a lot because I would be in a studio session. I would do all my tracks on Ableton, and then we would dump the stems into Pro Tools, and I would track the vocalists and singers on Pro Tools. That
Yeah, a lot
stopped.
of people do that.
That stopped for me personally until like Pro Tools 10. Like that was my last, like right when they started 10, and I started forcing myself to just track vocals, do everything all in the box with Ableton, and I haven't looked back since. So I have not looked at Sketch. So yeah, I wouldn't be the best source of information for you on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. I mean, I use Studio One also, and Studio One is really good for doing stuff like that, and I'll move it back and forth. But the sketch looks really promising. It looks like what they did is they took FL Studio, Ableton, some of the things that people were doing in those, and they created this thing called Sketch and put it inside of Pro Tools, so you can create that stuff and just drag it right into your session and everything else. So it may be the way to, for people that are using Pro Tools, it's something to definitely take a look at. Just even if you watch one of the videos on how it's used, it looks
super cool.
It looks promising.
Cool,
So,
man. Thanks for bringing that up. That's quite the virtual background that you have. I'm just kidding. I know.
yeah, my virtual reality.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for bringing that up, Nick.
Yeah, no problem. As
yeah.
a matter of fact, I got to jump off because I got a call I got to do. So,
all right, buddy.
Hey, this was very, very informative, very good. I appreciate it. Appreciate what you're doing here.
Great, Nick. Thank you for jumping on board. Sure. Mud, what's on your mind?
So, can you hear me?
No.
Okay, so I completed the ultimate.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. It was like, all right, go for it.
Yeah, so I completed the ultimate producer course today, and I
congratulations,
think it's one of the best things. And also, I wanted to ask you about drums and the difference between the drum machines and the samples. When you like adjust the velocity in drum machines, is it different? Is it different than adjusting velocity on any kind of samples?
Okay, that's a great question. So when we're using acoustic drum VSTs, adjusting the velocity will give you a different response with that snare drum, with that kick drum, with that hi-hat. So it's very important. It's not just lowering the volume. When you're adjusting velocity on samples, like a trap snare drum or a drum machine sample, you're literally just adjusting the volume. Okay, so it's just making it quieter. The thing is, though, you can use that to your advantage to actually create more feel with your programmed drums. So even if you're doing like some throwback 80s synthwave type drums and you're using like a Linn drum machine, you can still adjust the velocity there to create that same rhythm with the hi-hats. You don't want to just, because it's a drum sample, and you're like, well, what's the point of adjusting velocity? It's not going to give me a different response if I lower the velocity. No, you're changing the accented, what notes get accented, what notes get lowered in volume, and things like that. That is what's going to create the overall groove. All right?
Yeah.
Same thing like if you're doing EDM drums, if you're doing house drums, the switch up and the feel that you're doing with the open hi-hat and the closed hi-hat, that's where a lot of the house, that's where house gets its groove. If you think about it, when the main holy grail for any house record, whether it's like tech house, deep house, or even techno, it's the timing and the overall groove of the drums. So like the open hi-hats and how stiff they are, or how much you're adjusting the velocities.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey man, good on you on going through the Ultimate Producer course, bro.
Yeah.
That thing's a game changer.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. Surberto? Am I saying that right? Surberto?
Okay, yeah, I was trying problem with my mute button. Yeah, you got it. Just a couple of quick questions. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you. Okay.
Oh.
I got you. I hear you. You're fine.
Wow.
I'm just having some fun. 。  . 。
. 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 . 。
. 。 .
. . . 。 .
Yeah, can you hear me now? Hold on. Should be able to unmute now.
Hello?
Yeah, got you. What's up?
Thank you.
I hear you, bro. Everybody else hears me,
Hello?
right? Okay. Yeah, I'm talking. All right, I'm gonna let you get that situated, and then Jason, Tufts.
Thank you.
You can't hear.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Oh,
got you.
okay.
We got you, Surito. Just give me a moment. I'm gonna get to Jason.
Something happened. I'm getting a message that says the host will now would not allow me to unmute myself.
We hear you. We hear you. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna mute you, and Jason, go for it. What's up, Jason? Hold on. I think there's a setting that's not letting me.
Yeah, we're good. You got me.
Okay.
If I didn't miss it earlier, I was curious on strategies for using a reference track in regards to drums. Like, I'm to the point where I'm like layering sounds, and what you've gone through this morning, I'm kind of like, I get that. But as far as like drums that are kind of highly processed, like I'm thinking like Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots, like that just distorted, really hard, big drums. What kind of thought process can I go toward not just like the pattern and getting the vibe right and the timing and humanity of drumming, but like when you get into these super processed drums, like what is to listen for? Is it like, are they just slapping like distortion on it? Is it oversaturated? Like what are they doing to those drums that give it that like really dirty vibe? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually might have a session. I just recently did a session for something similar to that. So let me put it. It's going to be a mixture of layering. So the way I typically go about it is I'll have my foreground beat I'll have an acoustic drum kit. Yeah. And I just run overdrive and just dirty that thing up. But the problem is when you saturate or you dirty up live drums or a live acoustic instrument, you run into the problem of losing certain frequency bands. You start losing a lot of the low end beef. You start actually spotlighting some of the brittle high end on those drums. So you have to be careful with the way the tone balance of adding saturation and distortion to your drums, right? So I balance it. Let me see if I can do this here. Okay. I don't know why.
Like parallel process, just
no.
grab that.
I balance it with the layering. So let me open up the session and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So like here is something you probably can't hear because it's not playing. And hold on. Oh, well, that's because it's not solo. So check this out. These will be. Yeah. All right. So check this out. So here in the drum bus, what makes all this up is this precision to layer, but it's not just layering for the sake of layering. It's being I'm having a specific purpose with each layer. So it starts with my live drums. Here are the live drums, acoustic drums too. But let's take all of this out, okay? Here's the drums just bland. I have everything out here. Okay, let's take this off. Okay, so here it is. I'm sorry, it's still playing. Why is it still playing everything? Very strange. Hold on one second. Okay, there we go. Okay, there's the drums. Do you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my foreground beat. That's just the kick, snare. This is everything I was teaching you guys here. You can see the timing's off a little bit, creating the looseness, accenting that, and then... Okay, now I just I crush it with overdrive.
Yeah. What kind of velocity is on your MIDI on those?
Okay,
pretty.
I want the
medium.
snare to be really hitting. So I'm picturing a guy on the drum set just like Dave Grohl times 5, right? He's going at it. I'm purposely cutting out the low end, but there isn't that much there because of the overdrive. And then I'm smacking it with this compressor.
Okay.
Now that alone will be like, okay, sure. A lot of people will try to squeeze all the life just from that one drum kit alone.
Mm.
And that's where the problem is. It's like, man, I can't make it sound any bigger. Yeah, that's because when you listen to those references, there's tons of layering going on. So they're cheating, right? And you're like, so I'm then going to layer it with a loop. Now here's a breakbeat that comes on top of it. And I'm shaving off all the low end, and I'm excited enough. Then we go into some big layer drums. These drums just have... This is a drum rack with some samples, some big stomps, some big claps, and then we move. Then I layer it with a clap. And then my 2 big kicks here, which give me the whole... And if you look at the butts here, there's not...
Are they all overdriven a little bit, or is it just that original backbeat?
The original backbeat is what carries the texture of the distortion. Now I add the RC20 on the overall bus just to give them more distortion. And then drum bus for more distortion.
I love drum bus.
Right? And I would sometimes use like a transit designer. I think I was using this to accent the hits. So you can't really just play it safe, but you notice that look where I'm at. I'm not driving it heavy, so a little bit goes a long way with each layer. If you try to do too much with the live, like if I went overboard here and...
I think that's what I'm doing. Trying to do it all in one rack.
Right. You're trying to accomplish it all with one. You do little bit by little bit, and you layer it, and you layer it, and then you get... And that's how
and then if I want to take that away, say like for verses, I kind of want a cleaner sound, and then like use these kind of multi-layered for like a chorus.
Yeah, now you're getting it, bro.
To back that off again, I guess it's just a matter of taste. You just kind of like take it all back a little bit or turn off the overdrive or something.
Yeah, like I have a section here in this arrangement for this, and this is for...
Because I've just been automating the drum bus, which has been super helpful, but it's not quite...
Don't do that, man. That's just... I mean, do whatever you want.
There's just like, the percentage, the dry wet. I'll just go up.
Yeah. So I'll have like... I'm going to shift from one section where it gets lighter. And then I'll move here. So rather than toning down the texture, tone down who's there.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I'll use, because it's such a heavy drum, like it's a freaking behemoth, he needs to be in where it needs, like the mega chorus where everything's in. Right? So...
that ride is clean, so it's like sits right on top.
Yep,
too.
there you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you just kind of you kind of blend it in with all that in there.
And then the one little follow-up is like VST versus just sample packs. I lean more toward like samples, like they just seem to need less. Do you have a preference, like using like Addictive Drums or Easy Drummer versus just getting a pack and building my own kits? Like
just get a pack, build it, whatever. Yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, bro. I love Addictive. Like Addictive Drums gives me much more flexibility. So the hybrid approach, right? So you saw what I did there. I've got the Addictive Drums so that I can just have it there, but then do the fills and do all that kind of stuff, which is kind of cool. But then it's layered with the samples. Like for me, it's a both end. It's not one or the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I'm good.
Yeah, brother. Okay, Surberto, let's see what we got. We got it fixed? Were you able to hear me this whole time? Okay.
All right. You can hear me now.
Yeah.
Are there any legality concerns still, like with splice? I know in the sync world, especially with music, melody, it was like, oh, splice is a no-no. But, when it comes to drums, I don't think that there are any legality issues. I just checking with you on that.
Yeah, man. So that's a great question. So if for those of you who are like, what is he talking about legalities? I've been using splice. Oh my God, the Fed's going to knock on my door. No, the reality is this: when you're using loops, or especially melodic loops, guitar loops, synth loops, and that something that's really recognizable on the melodic motif aspect, it all becomes like who's first to the finish line. So let's say Justin Bieber used a splice loop, and it was, the guy producing this, and he never altered it, didn't even pitch it down or up, didn't chop it up or do anything with it, and it's right down to like exactly how you hear it on splice. They put that song out without that song is registered, and that sound recording is registered. And so now anybody else using that, Content ID says, hey, you're using a Justin Bieber record. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm using the splice loop. I found it. It was like, well, guess what? He was first to the race. He was first to actually copyright, register that. And so everybody else bowed down to the king. That's how that kind of works. So when you're talking about like one shots, like hits and stuff, that's why I like, that's fine. Like the one shots with drums and some drum loops, those, like, that's much easier and more forgiving, because those are really on the back, the back foundation, and it's not really at the forefront. So the way I kind of navigate through that is like, if I find something that's so cool on splice, and I was like, man, I love that cool melodic thing, that's such a cool melody stack or whatever, I will do two things. I will incorporate it, kind of pitch it up, kind of pitch it down. But sometimes you're like, man, I don't want to just purposely tweak it for the sake of like trying to slip through if it's already inspiring me the way it is. Well, then what I would do is incorporate it, but also then say, like, could I, like that audio to MIDI thing, could I replay it? Could I actually recapture the same vibe and then tuck it in the background somewhere, or just kind of hide it and let my replay or my new interpretation of that, reinterpretation of it, be at the forefront?
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. All right, guys, we got a couple more questions. John M. Glad you were able to get it working.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, brother.
So I just had a question. So ever since back in the days of my ASR10, I always had a problem with timing. Like when I'm trying to play something in, like getting the drums to get in on the time of the sample. Like, do you have any tips for that?
Dude, are you still rocking the ASR10?
I sold it, unfortunately.
Okay, but then why are you asking?
EPS 16 now, but yeah.
Yeah, I love my ASR10. I would just run. For those of you who know, it's a very iconic, Ensoniq was the name of the company, EMU, and they made the ASR10. That's where Tim was sampling all the Aaliyah stuff. That's all the like Ginuwine stuff. All the earlier stuff on Timberland was that we would sample and then trigger on that. Yeah, dude. I don't know if you don't have it anymore. What are you really asking?
So like when I'll find like a sample, like Plugin Boutique has this plugin called Radio. So sometimes I'll take something off the radio just randomly, like, oh, this is dope, and then I want to put something on it. I'll do the drums. It's like an Asian sample or something. I can't get the timing on right. Because the loop, like I know you can time stretch it and everything, right? Like you can time stretch it out to where you want it. But then when I try to do the drums, it just still sounds off.
And this is on an actual hardware unit or in Ableton Live or?
Ableton, MPC, whatever. I use everything, so it doesn't matter where the drums are coming from. It's just I don't know how to really explain if I could show you a sample, but like. If like how Asian music, they have a kind of a different the time signature is different sometimes.
Time signature, you have like a different, some might be in 3/4 and 6/8. So the way you want to navigate this is you want to identify where's the accent, right? So it's very simple. If you've got like an Asian loop or like, let me see if I have anything of that here. Let me see. Trying to see if I have. Okay, this is so weird, stereotypical. Like Asian music. And okay, there you go. Is that something like you're talking about? Something like
Yeah,
that?
something like that. Yeah, I had this one sample. I was like, this is crazy. It's I got it off the radio thing and I still got it. And it's like,
I would check this out, man.
Get
So
something
I'll
on
have something here. Like, let's just play this. Don't even know the sample, but Ableton Live 12 has kind of already mapped it. So if I hit the metronome. So I don't know, it did the dirty work for me, but here's if you're not using Ableton Live 12, the simple thing is you would find the downbeat. And what can really help is find the accent beats. So like 1, 2, 3. So if that's going to be a hit, then if you take this to your arrangement window, because this can be very helpful, the 3 steps you want to do is this: find your downbeat, wherever that's going to be. So for me, my downbeat's going to be here. Your next step is right-click the starting position and set bar 1, beat 1 here. Once you've done that, you would then right-click and say warp from here, and that's automatically going to adjust all the transients, and you're going to find that it would adjust this to the current tempo that you want to work in. Now, if you wanted to nudge and move things, you create a warp marker and then move that around so that you're actually creating a new rhythm. Right? And always work with your metronome on, because you need a guide to gauge where you're moving these stuff with. Right? So that's really it, man. You follow those 3 simple steps, find your downbeat, bar 1, beat 1 here, warp from here, and then you're going to be able to nudge and move things around to where you want them. I mean, Ableton and warping has made sampling so freaking stupid, crazy easy that it's like, yeah.
Okay.
You're literally just importing whatever you're recording, whatever samples you have, and just mark the warp markers with like, yeah, here's a downbeat. So if you created your kick and your snare, find the accent of that sample and nudge it to, okay, my snare is on the 2 and 4. That's why it might be very beneficial and helpful for you to do this in the arrangement view, where you have your sample here and then your MIDI drums here, where if you have like your kick and then your snare, right, then you can determine, oh yeah, that's where the sample needs to hit. So you just want to visually map it out. But again, go with the feel, go with the, like go what feels best.
Okay, can I ask one more question?
No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Yeah, no, go. Yeah, I'm kidding.
So
man.
About tempos, okay, I was watching, who producer Focus is for Aftermath. Some of his tracks are at 165 or 175. I know the difference between a 140 tempo and 75, and they sound almost similar. But how do you get?
Do you know why? Do you know why they sound similar?
Because it's half time.
Yes. Okay. Good. I'm just want to cover the fundamentals. Okay.
Yeah. But so like I've seen producer doing 167, but it still sounds like I've seen a producer doing a trap at 159, and that's like a super fast tempo, but it sounded slower. So is it because they're just using like 8 notes and 16, because tempo.
Go back. Yeah, go back to the answer you gave. It's half, right? So remember, no matter what tempo you're at, you're deciding to place the beat in whatever distance from the previous hit that gives it the perception of where the groove is at. Okay, so like just really quick, and then I have time for just one more. So like if I just grab this 909 and we go all the way up to like 166, let's take this weird thing off, okay? And let's just create a B here. Listen to the tempo. Do you guys hear the click track? Okay, that's pretty fast, right? Tick, tick, tick. But now look, when we do this, we put our kick drum here. It's just timing. So if I put a kick and I put the distance from my snare to be all the way over here, right? And I take the click off. How would I gauge how fast this is? I need something else that's going to create the subdivision for me. So if I go like this, every quarter note, this is how you have that halftime feel at 166 BPM. But if I change this and say, yo, you know what? Let's just go straight to doubling that. That's the subdivisions is what gives the feel of it being either slower or quicker.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
All right, yeah.
Are you in the school group at all, John?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. Just hit up the stuff in the classroom, man. Like it'll walk you through all of this.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, dude. All right, Francisco. Guys, by the way, I have a couple spots open. beatacademy.com/apply. You want to work with me personally for 2025? Let's do this. I'm excited to get a couple more people on board. And yeah, let's roll. All right.
Amen.
Crazy little plug, but go for it, man.
One quick question. When you're doing the sound selection for your drums, after you fine tune it and wherever your drums all set, do you leave it like that for the mix, or do you fine tune on the mix after you finish the track?
I'm sorry. Can you say that one more time? When I do sound selection. Yeah. Did it drop out?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. So when I'm doing sound selection, what was that?
On your drums and everything in your drums, is it already mixed, or do you mix after you finish the track?
One thing we all have to keep in mind. Think of it like this. When someone's cooking, they're using these ingredients, right? Hey, I'm going to season the steak. Let's say I'm baking a pie. I'm putting all the ingredients in there. It wouldn't make sense of that after the pie is cooked to be like, well, hold on. Now I'm going to go back into the pie and readjust all the stuff there because now it's ready to eat. It's like as I'm making it, I'm putting in the amount of salt. I'm putting in the amount of pepper. I'm putting in the amount of flavors that are going to actually, at the end of the day, get the results that I'm looking for. So as I'm creating, when I'm picking my snare drum, when I'm picking that kick drum, I'm starting off with a good place. Now, the reason why we have so much troubles with our mixing and our balance and our mastering is because we push that and say, "Oh, I'm gonna fix it in the mix. I'm gonna add the compression to the kick drum." Those are the overcompensating for poor sound selection choices. If you're not choosing really good ingredients, you're having to do much more work at the end of the day to say, like, man, this sounds like crap. I hope the mix can fix it. But if we can solve that, the kill shot to getting great mixes, great mastering, is right proper sound selection. So rather than me spending 8 hours to get that snare drum to sound okay on that 909 kit, I'd rather just spend 2 minutes, go through Splice, be like, or whatever it is I have in my, gazillion hard drives and be like, yep, that's my go-to. And it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like if I use that kick drum on my last 4 records, it's because it sounds freaking good and I'm going to use it again. Like, why am I overthinking it? I know it sounds great. I don't have to do anything. So if I'm using great sounding stuff to begin with, I'm placing it there. What I'm really doing is just blending the balance. It's like, hey, just lower it down. Put that snare in there, Like I did with the record I just showcased. Like, I'm just finding the balance. Like, okay, drums are way too loud, but everything sounds good, man. Just bring that down. And I want to choose and focus. I want to have a focal point. So I am going to do a masterclass on mixing at the start of the new year. So I think in January. So I'll go more in depth about that. But sound selection is the #1 key that unlocks great mixes. Because if they're good to begin with, you're having to do less work all throughout that process. So am I mixing while I'm working? Yes, because I'm choosing the ingredients I want to work with to begin with.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, pretty much. If
the says no. The says like no, bro. It's all good, man. Be real. That's what I'm here for.
If step 1 doesn't work out, then something is going wrong. That's what I'm saying, because fixing in the mix is just something that I'll fix in the mix, and then the end's like, it sounds like garbage. So,
right. You got to get out of the habit, Francisco, of saying it sounds like trash now and I'll fix it later. You won't. You're only going to embellish what you're putting in. The purpose of the mix is to say, I love the sounds I'm using. I just need help creating clarity, depth, and balance with the sounds I have. Starting off with crappy sounds and saying that the mix is going to fix it ain't. And I can prove it to you. You can export your stems and send the stems of the latest record or beat that you made, give that to a professional mixing engineer, and their hands are going to be tied and be like, what do you want me to do with this? Like, I don't have good sounds to start with. A bad vocal recording is a bad vocal recording. I can't do much than just clear it up. A bad guitar performance is a bad guitar performance, right? That's what I mean also by sound selection. Get the best recording, get the best take, and you're going to find that it's going to have much more compound dividends, or it's going to have, it has much more fruit from that labor than just saying, okay, I'm going to use the stock drum set or the stock 909 thing, and I'll swap it down the road. I rarely do that. I never say, let me just use this for now and then move forward. I'm like, if I don't like the sounds to begin with, it's not going to inspire me to even want to move forward.
Okay.
But the balance is, don't stay 5 hours tweaking and looking and hunting for sounds. That's why I'll dedicate like a Tuesday or something out of my day or whatever, a week, and I'd be like, today, all I'm doing is just going to organize, go through some samples, find some dope kicks, find all this stuff here, and that's it. Just move.
Right.
And then you always have that on my arsenal.
Just preparing your workflow, basically.
Yeah.